at Black Diamond Cuisine. Very famous in Newark. All the best chefs in Newark were here. It wasn't only very expensive to eat here, but you had to reserve well in advance. Before going out, John had asked Elise to call and make a reservation already. John pushed Bill out of the elevator, while Elise and Mary followed behind him. This was her first time at such a classy restaurant, so Mary was a little nervous.
Elise, this is too expensive, isn't it? We can't simply spend John's money. This is as good as owing him a favor, but we can't afford to return it.
Elise knew it would cost several $1,000s just to eat a meal at Black Diamond Cuisine. A colleague had eaten here before and bragged about it for an entire month.
John said he wants to treat you to dinner. I can't stop him. You guys just eat. Later I'll give him the money for our share.
Mary felt better after hearing that. John pushed Bill towards the reception desk, and one of them quickly came forward to attend to them.
My apologies, sir, but our restaurant is full. If you still want to eat here, please wait over at the side.
It's full.
John looked around the restaurant, then at Elise.
Didn't you make a reservation already?
Elise stepped forward and took out her phone, the reservation notification still clearly displayed on it.
That's right, we made a reservation. You can get your reception to check the records. We reserved for 6 p.m., but it's only 5:46 p.m. now.
My apologies, there were some guests who came and went indirectly. Your notification might not have updated in time. Please wait here by the side, or you could come back tomorrow.
What's going on? We made a reservation first.
Elise started to feel frustrated. Why was it so difficult to just have a meal? Surely this restaurant couldn't do things in any way they fancied just because their business was good? Mary took one look and tugged at Elise.
Why don't we go somewhere else?
This place was too expensive. It only took one look at the clothes the customers inside were wearing to know that the prices here were beyond her.
Mom, this is the first time I'm treating you to a meal, so we're not going anywhere else. We're eating here.
Nobody had ever dared to snatch a table from him before. Whenever John went out to eat, all the restaurant owners always received him with great politeness. Now he had even made a reservation, but there was no space.
Who's your boss?
The waiter raised an eyebrow. Trying to drop names? He'd seen plenty of such people.
Our boss is Howard Hiddleston, CEO Hiddleston of Newark. Heard of him?
Most people knew that they couldn't afford to offend someone like Howard Hiddleston and would disappear after hearing his name. The waiter had seen plenty of such people, there was no point pretending. John didn't respond. He took out his phone and called Howard Hiddleston. Howard Hiddleston was soaking himself in a hot spring on the highest floor. The young and slim model in his embrace looked very uncomfortable. The phone at the side started ringing. It was a number he didn't recognize, but he took one hand off the model and picked up the call.
Little Howard, I'm at your restaurant. Is there any space?
Howard Hiddleston immediately became alert when he heard this voice. He immediately stood up and sprayed water everywhere, scaring the poor model.
Yes, we do, big boss. Are you at Black Diamond Cuisine? I'm coming down right away.
He didn't care that his hair was still wet. Howard Hiddleston dried himself off in a blink of an eye, got changed and took his personal lift all the way down. Back at the Black Diamond Cuisine reception. The waiter looked at John as if he was looking at an idiot. Little Howard? This guy could really act, huh? There was nobody in the whole of Newark who dared to call Howard Hiddleston Little Howard. Perhaps he figured he didn't have long to live, so he might as well act cool all the way onto CEO Hiddleston's turf.
Young man, why don't you ask around whose turf this is? If you're trying to act cool, this is the wrong place. I'll give you 1 minute to get out. Otherwise, don't blame me for being nasty.
John ignored him. He wasn't going to quarrel with a waiter who looked down on customers. The waiter's voice became cold as he took out his receiver and said into it.
Brother Jacob, there's someone making trouble at Black Diamond Cuisine. Please come up.
Bill and Mary started getting anxious. This restaurant wasn't a simple place.
Elise, we'd better go. We can't afford to offend them.
That's right, let's go home and eat. I'll cook.
They had suffered much humiliation and bullying over many years. Now they had become even more timid than before, afraid to offend anybody. But Elise didn't move. Because she knew that John really knew Howard Hiddleston. He'd even split a bun with him, lived under a bridge together before, and were fellow brothers of their beggars sect. There was a flurry of footsteps as a dozen burly men came rushing over. The one leading the pack was obviously the brother Jacob that the waiter called earlier.
Who dares to make trouble here? Is someone tired of living?
Brother Jacob, it's them. I told them there was no space, but they still wanted to go in. And this guy over here actually called our boss Little Howard.
Brother Jacob's face immediately darkened and turned icy. Little Howard? Even if he had the guts of a leopard, he wouldn't dare to call Howard Hiddleston Little Howard. This fellow here was tired of living for sure. He rolled up his sleeves and they surrounded John and family.
You want to get out of here yourself? Or get thrown down from upstairs?
John turned and looked straight at Brother Jacob, narrowing his eyes a little.
You sure you want to be rude to me?
Brother Jacob was taken aback by this response.
Who the hell do you think you are? For me to kill you is like killing an ant. You still think I've been rude to you? Enough of this nonsense. Since you refuse to move, then don't blame me for being vicious.
He was about to attack when the elevator door opened and Howard Hiddleston dashed over, his hair still splashing water.
Stop!
He shouted and Brother Jacob froze. The waiter also froze. Boss was here.
Stop it. Every single one of you don't freaking move.
Howard Hiddleston stepped forward and slapped Brother Jacob.
Are you blind? You don't know that he's my boss? You dare to hit him? Big boss, Little Howard here is very sorry for coming so late and having such ill-mannered subordinates.
Brother Jacob was completely stunned. He held his face but couldn't feel the pain. The waiter was equally shocked. He only felt his legs were trembling and he nearly fell to the floor. Howard Hiddleston had called John Big Boss, and actually called himself Little Howard. What was going on? Mary and Bill were also stunned, their face filled with disbelief. Big Boss? When did John become Howard Hiddleston's boss?
What are you still standing there for? Apologize to Big Boss now.
I'm
sorry.
very sorry.
I say, Little Howard. If you want to do business, then you have to do it properly. How can you let your subordinates change the rules any way they like?
John was looking at Howard Hiddleston and speaking very calmly, but Howard Hiddleston still felt tense all over.
You taught them that? Or that little punk, Charlie, didn't teach them properly?
Howard Hiddleston felt his heart was coming out of his mouth.
This is my fault. I didn't teach them well. Big Boss is right. I will make amends, I will change right now. You can get lost for going against the policies of the restaurant.
He then turned to look at Brother Jacob. Brother Jacob's face immediately turned ashen.
He was just doing his job. No need to punish him.
Brother Jacob immediately clasped his hands together and hurried replied.
Thank you, Big Boss, for your forgiveness. Little Jacob here will work hard from now on.
He was worried that if John got angry, he would get thrown down from here. Looks like this Big Boss stuck to his principles.
Big Boss, if you want to eat here, just tell me, why bother with reservations?
Howard Hiddleston smiled as he said this. Then waved his hand and Brother Jacob left with the other men. He turned and told the receptionists.
Tell all the other guests to leave. Their meals today are all free, don't let them interrupt my boss from having a meal.
The receptionists were all stunned into silence. They had never seen Howard Hiddleston treat anybody so politely before. The receptionists were about to inform the guests when Mary spoke up.
Don't do this, everyone just wants to have a nice meal. It's not nice to chase them away.
Did you hear what my mom said?
Oh yes, Auntie is right. I'm such a fool, I hope Auntie won't take it to heart. Let's go to my personal room then?
John didn't object, so he led the way personally and brought them to a luxurious room. This room was used only by himself, and nobody else was allowed to. But since John was here, he wanted to give nothing but the best to John. Bill and Mary couldn't help but gasp at this room that was even bigger than their own house. And the fittings in here definitely cost a lot. How was John of such high standing?
One of all the best dishes we have. Uncle, what would you like to drink?
Bill froze. He knew the drinks here were expensive, so he quickly waved his hands.
I'll just have water.
That won't do. You've come to my place, and it will be terrible if I don't take good care of you.
He sent out another instruction to get the best Moutai. Howard Hiddleston could tell from the strange expressions on Bill and Mary that they were very curious about how he was connected to John.
Uncle, Auntie, don't stand on ceremony. I know Big Boss from a long time back. Back then we were both homeless and I nearly died from hunger on the streets. If not for that half a bun that Big Boss gave me, there will be no Howard Hiddleston today. So don't stand on ceremony with me at all. This restaurant is as good as Big Boss restaurant. Anytime you want to come, just come. I'll leave this room for your personal use, and everything you eat here will always be free.
Bill and Mary were even more stunned. Free? This meal would cost several $1,000s. It was free just because he said so. Bill immediately recognized that bottle of Moutai that the waiter brought in. Both husband and wife didn't know how to react. They didn't even know how they should reject this.
Dad, Mom, don't worry about it. He's a brother to me.
Howard Hiddleston was so happy he could fly. Did you hear that? Big Boss said he was a brother to him. What an honor and privilege.
All right, go back to what you were doing.
Sure, Big Boss. Boss Elise. Uncle. Auntie, take your time to eat. Feel free to order anything.
Howard Hiddleston politely excused himself and closed the door behind him. It was silence in the room. Bill and Mary were so shocked they felt numb from it. This new son-in-law had sent shock after shock.
John, your fellow brothers in the beggars sect are really close.
She wasn't stupid. She could tell that Howard Hiddleston and John didn't behave like brothers. Howard Hiddleston was obviously respectful and fearful of John. John wasn't going to tell her that everything that Howard Hiddleston had now was given by him. As long as Howard Hiddleston did a good job, he would be able to have even more. So much that he wouldn't believe it.
My wife is so clever. Dad, Mom, don't just sit there, eat something.
But Bill and Mary still didn't move. They continued to just sit there, and even became more reserved than before. All of this was too unreal and too shocking. They could see clearly that John wasn't any ordinary man. But this was more extraordinary than they had imagined. After a long time, Mary looked at John and asked,
Are you very rich? Compared to CEO Foster?
He can't be compared to me at all.
John did not attempt to hide this. Mary didn't ask any more.
Are you good at fighting?
It was Elise's turn to ask.
I know a bit of martial arts.
Compared to the team leader of the Dawson Group security team?
Elise knew that the team leader was a highly skilled man who had retired from the army. He had no problem taking on 5 people by himself. John didn't say anything, but laughed lightly. There was disdain in that laugh. Elise immediately understood.
My legs, can they really be treated?
Yes, I guarantee you.
Anyone who knew him would know that these words were of tremendous value. Bill took a deep breath, his eyes turning red as he looked at John seriously. Then he picked up the liquor on the table, pouring a glass for himself. Then tried to pour one for John. John hurriedly took the bottle from him to pour his own glass.
I don't know what else to say, but this glass is for you, no matter whether I can really be treated or not. I'm grateful for just these words.
Bill never drank much, but he lifted the glass with both hands and drank it down in one gulp. Mary didn't stop him. She knew how much her husband wanted to be able to stand again. John also downed his glass, then poured a glass for both Bill and Mary.
This one is for Dad and Mom. If both of you didn't bring up such a wonderful girl like Elise, I would not be here today.
He downed his glass after saying that. Bill and Mary exchanged glasses but didn't say anything and downed their glass. After 2 glasses of liquor, the atmosphere wasn't so tense anymore. Bill started talking more and started drinking excitedly. Mary and Elise tried to stop him a couple of times but finally gave up. It was rare that Bill could put aside his worries, so they let him take this time to really relax. The 2 men were chatting very happily. Mary and Elise watched John and Bill drink and chat, and suddenly felt like this scene in front of them was very heartwarming. But John wasn't really their son-in-law. Before, they felt that John wasn't good enough for Elise, so they were angry and upset. But now, after understanding more about John, they knew they weren't good enough for John.
John, I know you're very rich, but I hope that you won't simply spend money on us. These are all favors we owe you, but we really can afford to return it.
Her voice did not blame him or mock him, but sounded a little helpless. They were not a greedy family. John looked up at Mary and understood what she was getting at. He knew that it wasn't going to be easy to get this family to accept him so quickly.
I've been an orphan since young. I had no home, so I've never eaten home-cooked food before. Now I finally have a home, so I'm very happy. As long as Mom and Dad don't chase me out, I'll listen to anything you say.
Mary suddenly felt her heart go out to him. No wonder John loved eating home-cooked meals. He must have suffered so much pain and injustice to become so rich today. He didn't have parents by his side since he was young and had to bear everything on his own. Just thinking about it made her heart ache.
Even if you're not my son-in-law, you're still a kind child.
If you don't mind that my house is small, then stay here first. One day if you find a better place, then you can go. Let's drink.
Bill raised his glass. John also raised his glass. He could sense that this family had started to change their attitude towards him. He knew that Elise and family were not greedy people. In fact, they were the complete opposite. They were extremely kind and naive, and were definitely worth protecting. There was only one thing that Mary got wrong. John had no intention of leaving at all. This was his home.
This marks the end of Chapter 20. Please like, share and subscribe to my channel and comment any other novel you would like to be featured here.